Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, back once again to review everything that happened over the Scottish Premiership weekend, as I am, yet again, a football fan who is an orphan without a manager. To talk about that and everything else that happened, including the crowning of Scottish Premiership champions, it's Tony Anderson. Tony, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm all right, I suppose. Was at a stag do on Saturday. It was in Glasgow, actually. So I managed to saw some rowdy Celtic fans come home from Dundee at some point, come marching the club and pub that I was in, and just been told instantly, "You're not getting served," and they walked straight out. I think I ended up in some sort of karaoke bar, Craig. Not sure what it was called. Had a big stage in that. Performed a little number, of course, and then missed the 2 a.m. bus home. Just had to wait 55 minutes in the bus station, which is always the worst. They get home to like 20 to 5. No, they're absolutely like trying to listen to podcasts. Trying to listen to I'd listen to maybe some Terrace, some football cliches, like sort of voices that you consider friends. So it felt like I was being looked after as it was going on, because it gets grim when it's like 2 hours without a drink as well, and you're like, oh, please make this be over. But I made it. We're back, and everything's going to be all right, I suppose.
Yes. So whose stag do was it, by the way? I couldn't figure out.
A guy called Robbie, who's in Hospital Corner.
Oh, the fact you did actually say in the chat beforehand, yeah.
So I'm DJing at his wedding, actually, in a couple of weeks. So
right, nice.
We'll see how that goes as well. Probably badly, much like the stag.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, aye, that kind of night when you're steaming and you listen to podcasts, and yeah, you do listen to ones that you know, because there's no point in listening to ones that you want to learn anything, because you'll not take any of it in, you'll not remember any of it. But yeah, listen to someone with familiar voices is quite a good technique. I think you've done well there.
Absolutely what I would do. I was like, people, are they like football cliches? I feel like when I hear them, I get on board exactly what their type of vibe is, and obviously ourselves. With other Terrace members, just I know him, that's fine, I'll be okay. Bus is fucking rammed 3 a.m. as well. Every seat's taken.
Oh, of course, because it'll be the 3 o'clock one as well. Oh no!
Yeah, so I tried to get the 2 o'clock. Honestly, I missed it by about a minute. Dreadful, just a dreadful moment.
You should have.
There's such good fun had been had. The giggles were great. I had a lovely time.
You should have head back down to NQ64. That you could have got one more. I
should have went to, but I don't. I just don't know Glasgow that well. Like I know it well, but at that time when I'm not sure about where I am, what's around. That probably was a good idea. I could have sat on the pint and then waited. Much nicer than sitting in the bus station, the grimmest place in the world.
To be fair, that's Buchanan Street to Merchant City. No, but to be fair, it would have passed the time. It would have been probably about a 15-minute walk there. Sink a pint in 20 minutes, 50-minute walk back. Now you're plenty of time to get on the bus.
Yeah. But I survived, and I'm here, and I made it.
At least you were first in the queue.
Yeah. Then it was by the weekend as Neil Critchley, so that's fine.
That's very true. So obviously we're going to get to Neil Critchley losing his job and what I think of it as a Hearts fan, but we will begin with the crowning of, I was going to say it is a new champion. It's a new champions every season. Somebody wins it, but it's the team that win the title just about every single year. Well, every single year except from one since 2012, and that is Celtic. Champions again, don't you know, or whatever the fucking song goes. And they done it in style in the end, beating Dundee United 5-0 at Tannadice. An own goal from Ryan Strain kicked things off. Nicholas Kuhn, having been in not great form over the last couple of months, did manage to pull himself back with a double before halftime. And then Adam Ida, as Adam Ida tends to do, putting a gloss on the scoreline by adding another couple himself.
Yeah, I
think it was in the Discord this week where somebody said, like, has Adam Ida ever scored an important goal at all this season? And I think we came up with like 2.
As I said, I was travelling through to the stag do because I was trying to get there for the Hibs game starting, so it was during this, and that's what I said. I was like, oh, it's gone pretty badly. That's Ida started to score for Celtic.
Dundee United actually started the game not too badly and missed a couple of chances, but it's got like frustrating from a United perspective for 3 reasons, I would say. One is that they did start okay, and you would thought for the first half an hour this wasn't going to end up a 5-0 scoreline. Two, that they did capitulate in the way that they did, and between 30 minutes and 58 minutes, they conceded 5 goals. I mean, including injury time, it's a little more than half an hour, but still, that's 5 goals in half an hour. That's not good enough. And also, as well, the fact that impacts on their European chances a little bit as well. Because
goal difference matters at this stage, definitely.
Goal difference matters. It doesn't. It was never really in play with Hibs because Hibs' goal difference is just, I think it was plus 11 before the game. That'd be right, maybe plus 12 because Hibs also lost the goal. I think it was maybe plus 12 before the match. So they were never going to catch that up anyway. That was never going to really be in play. But what is in play is Aberdeen. They've now slipped behind Aberdeen in terms of goal difference. And I think Dundee right now are -4 and Aberdeen are -3. And while 4th and 5th, not a huge amount of difference, you'd still definitely rather finish 4th. But in terms of, say Hibs collapse and it's they 2 going for 3rd, and that ends up being the difference, and this will be a very costly weekend instead. But we did say we would talk about Celtic first of all.
Hey.
Not much to say about the performance. Once they got going, they motored away, and I thought, to me, Tony, the kind of only really kind of thing to talk about with Celtic was just almost a kind of pub chat to kick things off here.
I can do that.
And thinking about where the Celtic team rank in terms of their most recent teams that have won titles. So going back to 2012, they've won the league, as I mentioned, every single season except for one. I would say this team is about 3rd or maybe 4th in terms of that.
Behind Postecoglou's best team and behind
the second
Rodgers Invincibles.
Yeah.
Is that where we are?
I thought the only other one that really would come close, so you can maybe say some of the early Lennon teams, because obviously one of those teams beat Barcelona, but I think when you have to think about those teams though, and the fact that Celtic were going up against nothing in the top flight for those seasons, to the point where they could even bring in Ronnie Dyla, him being pretty crap, and them still winning 2 league titles under him, because they were just, you could put one of us 2 in charge of Celtic during that period. They were going to win a title.
Don't know. I would do a lot of sabotaging.
Okay.
Everyone would be seriously unwell for large periods as I piss in their food. Like when Spurs down south when they all got
the lasagna.
Yeah, the lasagna, yeah. Be very much like that at Lennoxtown, I think, if I was in charge.
But the other one I thought maybe came close in terms of rivaling this one was, and it's forgotten about because of how the season finished, but the team that played in the season that led up to COVID. That was Lennon's team. And it's kind of forgotten about for that, and also due to the fact that Rangers collapsed after beating Celtic at Celtic Park close to the new year. But after 30 games, they had 80 points. And had they continued in that trajectory, now obviously Rangers had crumbled to the point that Celtic would have had basically nothing to play for quite a substantial period towards the end of that season. But if they had managed to continue that momentum, they would have reached 101 points and 112 goals. So that's pretty impressive. I mean, the other 2 that I said that I've compared them to the Ange team from 2 seasons ago. Not that Ange team of the first season, they obviously finished the campaign superbly, but for the first half, he was still kind of getting his team together. He was still getting the players in, so it wasn't quite at full strength. I mean, that team scored 114 goals, which is just 2 off Celtic's all-time record for a single season, which I think was set in like the 1911s or something, mental like that. So it's not quite there. But to be fair to this team, they do score a lot of goals. And they're probably not going to do it because, well, they're away to Ibrox next week, so they're unlikely to score like 4 or 5. And then they've got 3 completely dead rubbers, already won the title to finish the campaign. However, they are still on course themselves if they continue doing what they've done so far to get to 114 goals for this season. And it speaks to just the crazy amount of firepower they've got up front. And I was going to actually, I'll just go to you now because I was going to talk about Jota, but we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, I mean, the firepower they've got up front, and like maybe to stick up for Ida a tiny tootsie bit. One of the goals I thought in this game was kind of goals he should score more often, which is the second one where he hits it near post. And I know there might be an argument that Walton could maybe have done a bit better getting down, but just the way that Adebayoga sort of just bounces off him a bit, And it's just, he doesn't even look like favourite to get that ball away. And he puts it in. They're the kind of goals that I think Ida should score, because we've seen it. I always hark back to it. Like last season, the day that I understood Adam Ida was that game at Rugby Park. And I went, right, okay, this is the point in him. This is what makes people want to go for big money. This is why maybe Ireland are holding out hope for him to be a big striker for him, and why Celtic might want to bring him home. But he just doesn't do that. Just doesn't do it enough.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Yeah, but yeah, it was like when they started bringing Jota back this season, you're just like, for fuck's sake, man. There's just... I think you're like that. Like Jota might even, at the time, you're like, Jota might just be a fucking squad player now. We've really got to that sort of world that go in. And then there's just a question of how much is it deliberate, what happened with Maeda, with Kyogo, although I can kind of push towards the fact they didn't seem to do very much work to try and replace my Kyogo when he left. So maybe there was a little bit of, we think that this guy has got to the stage where he is a bit more of a killer, if you like, with Maeda.
Yeah, you can just play him through the middle. He doesn't necessarily have to play out wide.
Yeah, and as I said, that it's like what Celtic have to do, the goal scoring stuff you're talking about. I saw that Rodgers was mentioning that and sort of setting that as a target about trying to break records. But this is what Celtic have to do to keep motivating. So it's quite it's almost like an experiment of like what they're trying to do now is what they have to keep people at the levels they do. And I think it might be, as much as I scoff because I'm a normal guy, with like guys like McGregor and stuff like that, when people talk about maybe lack of ambition and stuff like that, and the way McGregor talks, and when you hear anybody talk like this, because you're just a kind of normal guy who has some ambition, but nowhere near levels ambition of sort of professional athletes. So always just like a bit eye rolling. But it must be the case that guys like McGregor must genuinely drive the standards so much, because it must be so easy to fall down a couple of percent, man. Because we can all pretend it does get boring. We can pretend it doesn't. They can pretend it doesn't. I know most of the. I see the sort of patter online of oh no, another league win, boring, because they're saying it back to what everyone continues saying. But come on now, there must be an element of it. So like for guys like McGregor, like they must be really, really good at that. Like it means that you always think that maybe McGregor might go on to be a really, really good manager, because he must be one of the guys mainly driving this in a team mainly made up of sort of foreign talent and maybe players that have played in England and stuff. It is kind of a long furrow that he's doing there. And you imagine he is a big part of the fact that I know they made that joke about them when they were saying we never have off days. And I'm like, you got beat off literally the worst team in the league a couple of weeks ago. But in general, and I do know what they mean, they're always seeming to challenge them again, challenge themselves on goals, and they went further in the Champions League than they had for fucking years this season. It felt like the team and the club made big strides this season for their future. It makes me, and the way Rodgers talking, kind of moving into maybe slightly believing that he might hang around for a little while, and since he got what he wanted out of his signings in recent years, maybe makes him want to stay, because he can maybe envisage how this is going to move forward. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Like Callum McGregor, it might be interesting. He's just going to go and then instantly take the Celtic job. I'm starting to get the feeling that might, with no break, end up getting handed like the caretaker role straight away into being the Celtic manager, and everything just continues forever until I die a slow, painful, sudden death, actually, if I'm being brutally honest about how I'll go.
So, another thing I could discuss for this game, the protests. So, twice in this match, Celtic fans, first of all, they threw on tangerines during the first half with a sign that said, you're enjoying the fruits of something along the lines of enjoying the fruits of our labour, and then they threw on footballs in the second half. Now,
what's that? You enjoy watching us play football? I mean,
I can't remember. There was a sign as well. I can't remember.
No,
what
I saw the
was,
sign like about the charges, I just like the fruits of my labour, but then later on, just fucking chuck footballs on.
Well, there was something to do with balls. There was something to do with like. There was something to do with ball or football in that. So I think that's what the footballs were signifying. But I can't remember exactly. How did he sneak them in?
Really wondering. How did he sneak a football in? Like, all those footballs. I mean, who's on? I know, I don't like to blame stewards.
A lot of men pretending they're pregnant.
Yeah, like I can understand you maybe get the tangerines in, but pumped up size 5 miters. Like, how are you getting these into the game? And like, exactly that video of the guy outside the festival where he's just the air things on there.
He's like patting thin air.
Patting thin air. Must have been a lot of that. Because I don't know how it's possible to get that many footballs in.
So people get annoyed about the disruption to the game and stuff like that, which always pisses me off. It's a protest. It's supposed to disrupt.
Yeah.
If you're not there to disrupt, there's no point in fucking protesting.
Putting up a sign means nothing.
Yeah, and exactly. Putting up a sign by itself means absolutely bugger all. And paying 42 quid for a Scottish Premiership League match is an absolute nonsense. Nobody should be paying that at all. It is a disgrace. But the problem is that it's not going to be effective at all, is it? Because ultimately, what matters the most is the bottom line. What matters the most, what you make change in Scottish football and in any kind of football, is that you hit clubs where their pockets, where the money is, hit them in their pocket, and don't pay the 42 quid. And that's the only type of protest that clubs listen to, and it's to do a boycott. It's to take away that income. But the thing is, though, unfortunately for Celtic, and I mean the Celtic fans have all my sympathies with this, because they can't really boycott. And it's the same with Rangers as well in similar scenarios, because especially for a game like this, say like the fans who go regularly to these games decide to boycott en masse and say like we're not had enough of this, we're not going. There's just going to be thousands of other Celtic fans being like, I never get to go to away games. I never get to see us win a title at another ground. I'll just pay this ridiculous fee this one time, and then that'll be fine. Like it doesn't really
totally
hit me that hard. So there's always going to be these people in the back end. So what they kind of really have to do is and it's the same for Scottish footballers, and we've talked about it loads. Like if you want change in Scottish football to happen, fans need to come together and put differences aside and say like, no, this is for the better of Scottish football, and then kind of create a union, and then go at the clubs like that and say, right, no, we've had enough of this. This needs to change, and we're not being divided and conquered. We're coming together, kind of thing. But we know that's a pipe dream. We know that's never going to happen.
This country. I always feel like that's it's both it's like your biggest selling point, and maybe the thing I'm most weirdly proud of is in Scottish football is that regimented nature of everyone hating each other completely and no one giving any quarters. But at the same time, it's like our biggest weakness as well. And want me to go on about neoliberalism and capitalism again on a podcast, but that's exactly what it needs. It needs everyone divided. That's exactly what its breeding ground is. So in Scottish football, you're right. That's exactly the sort of perfect breeding ground for these prices to go up and up. We saw it with the Scottish Cup semi-finals as well, where they were up at 40 quid. And I always look at those games. They're like the breeding ground for the new maximum price. Whatever's done there between those 4 clubs, and I'm not going to blame anyone individually, because the 4 clubs will all be at it at different times, depending on their situation. Some of the prices always get put up at that point. And the Scottish national team is another one where they do this breeding ground for setting new parameters on football. And lo and behold, 40 quid in the semi-finals, literally 3 weeks later, a team's in the Scottish Premiership knows suddenly that they can do it, and it's a disgrace. It really is. It's really starting to annoy me, and I always feel like I get caught between, like, if you have a slightly bit of a profile, like some of us do, should we do more? But I've got work in that. I mean, this is the problem, and I totally admit, and I just like fucking around, and I already do this and all these other things extra, and it's like I feel, but if someone else was to do it and take on the lion's share, I would take part fully, and I would come along to events, and I would definitely, if there was any value in me, I would offer it.
And if it's too much of a pipe dream to get together with fans of other clubs, then one thing you can do is go to your own club, because, and you don't want to do this because it just draws up these dividing lines, and you don't get anything solved. But because everybody just goes so defensively, especially online, as soon as a club is questioned in any way, because you saw it. You saw Celtic fans saying 42 quid, absolute disgrace. I mean, they're bang on. And then you saw fans of other clubs saying, well, 35 quid for, or whatever it is, 30 odd quid for sitting in the away section at Celtic Park. And I mean, Celtic fans are just biting back at this and saying, no, it's not the same kind of thing. But if you look at value for money for your supporter, like just strip out what the club is, strip out everything. If you're looking at just value for money for each ticket, that's on the same level.
Aye.
Because if you're a fan of any club going to Celtic Park, it's a terrible view. You get treated like shit. You're very unlikely to win the game. So if you're actually just talking about value for money, that's not good enough either. And you need to own that, and you need to go to your own club and say, can we start by kind of creating some sort of precedent here that maybe others will follow? Because if it's anybody in Scottish football that others are going to follow, it's going to be Celtic.
Mm-hmm. And like, as I said, obviously the obvious one, and I hate going on about bringing like fucking Bundesliga, but the obvious one, they just basically all done no away fans went to any game. And then it went back to being €20 for a ticket for all away fans. The minute it went up, they just didn't go. And that's the kind of unifying that they do. But like you're saying, it's just people who don't get an opportunity will just sneak in and take them. Scabs is the word that we're looking for.
Yeah, scabs. Yeah. That is exactly the word to look for.
And we all know they exist in the UK especially. So where we fucking love authority for some reason. So, yes, and fair play to Celtic. I didn't mind what they were doing, and I like it when people protest. I like it when people make a scene, because, like you said, it's the only way. Things like people, people just stop oil. Well, I can't get to my work on time. That's the point. Exactly. So when you're telling them and moaning at them like that, you're not going to really change their attitude towards it. And I get it when you start talking about bigger picture stuff like ambulances, etc. But yeah, you're so right. It's just the depressing side. And again, it bleeds more out from football. We're talking about things about society in a microcosm in Scotland and the UK in general, where people sneer at people trying to make a difference and trying to make changes.
Let me just bracket this game. Jesus Christ, we've already done like 20 minutes on it, but let me just bracket this game before we move on by talking a little bit more about Dundee United. Declan Gallagher being left on the bench for this entire match was a little bit odd, and it could be that he's just not fit enough, and Jim Goodwin was looking at the rest of the games and thinking, right, we're going to lose this one anyway. I've got this idea to go with 4 at the back. Seville just played, or Seve, or however you pronounce it. I think I've been calling him the wrong name all season.
I do kind of get the 4 at the back. I can see why they do that, because obviously with the wingers so good at Celtic and the main way that they go through teams, I can see why when if you play a 3-5-2 and obviously Dundee United make huge inroads, their creativity is massively through those wide areas, and it feels like if you don't put 2 in there, you're going to get nothing for the wide areas, which means you'll not create anything, because that's the only bit that you can go. So I kind of get, and I think he done it in the game before when they had a good performance against Celtic, as they used the 4 at the back rather than the 3 that he's used in every other ones at Tannadice. So I saw where he was coming from with it.
But what it has done is it's fueled rumours, or kind of started rumours, that either Gallagher as kind of down tools and said that if he's not got a contract extension, then he's not really interested in playing, or that there's been a falling out because of that. Now, I'm not saying I believe that at all, because you get these rumours in football all the time, and most of the time they're complete horseshit. But it did make me think, how smart was it to tell Declan Gallagher in the middle of a European run, where if you finish third, you will get around about £5 million, to tell him that he's not getting a contract next season? Because to me, that feels a bit unnecessary.
There was someone else who done it with as well, did they not? And like, why do you need to announce it to the fans and stuff like that? I don't. But that maybe feeds into the fallout. That maybe does feed that narrative.
That feeds it. It certainly feeds it in narrative, whether it's true or not. But it just kind of made me think, what was the point in that? Because you've
so easy, just go all hands on deck. No contract discussions now. We're all pushing in the same way, even if you're just talking to an agent. You know, you'll get away with that chat, even if it's bollocks. You'll get away with that chat, even internally. I think when you've got so much to achieve as Dundee United. So I agree. It was a strange decision for them to do, and Kuhn decided to turn up as well, just to go back to Celtic quickly. just before the season's finished. All right, I'll try again. Team of the years and that's on again. So vote for me.
Just justifying that place he got amongst the 4 nominees for Player of the Year for the PFA Scotland, which is obviously voted on before this weekend. But like I say, just justifying his place there after a poor couple of months made it seem like he might fall out of it. But we should move on. So let's go to Tynecastle on Saturday. Hearts defeated 1-0 by Dundee. Simon Murray, obviously, getting the Dundee's goal, the only goal of the game midway through the first half. And that meant the end of Neil Critchley, who was sacked on Saturday. 2 things to me to kind of talk about this from a kind of big picture Critchley perspective. Firstly, I've saw people kind of questioning the timing of it. I was like, why now? Why not wait till the end of the season? Well, because form's been really terrible recently. There's only been, 5 games without a win in all competitions, only 1 goal scored, only 1 win in the last 6 league games with 4 points. If they're going to get rid of him anyway, and it looks like maybe the team's starting to spiral under them, why not act now? Why not play your hand? Because Hearts, essentially, probably 1 point would do it to just make them safe. At 3 points would definitely do it. And you're just looking for one reaction, a kind of a message to send to the players. Liam Fox will very likely Liam Fox will take the team and just like, right, just go out, get the 3 points, and then you can do whatever the fuck you want for the rest of the season, and then we can forget it ever happened.
Yeah. And please come to the Player of the Year dinner.
What nonsense that was. Yeah. The club's still holding it, obviously. You're always going to hold it. But the decision from the club to continue tweeting out like throughout the night, just getting supporters more and more angry and making such a big deal about it on social media. I'm like, what are you doing? Just do this as quietly as possible. You're not going to cancel a Player of the Year dinner because there's just too much money spent on it from too many people that you're just going to piss off further. Because there's going to be there's fans that would be like, oh, who would ever go to that? Why would you bother? If I was a fan there, that'd be ridiculous. I'd be demanding change and blah, blah. Some fans just want to go along and have a good time and meet their favourite
And also,
players.
People fucking arse fall out when they talk like that as well. You're never going to really go, you're just going to go in and go, can I get a pint, please? It's really what you're going to do.
You might say something to one player and be like, well, why did this happen? Kind of thing. That's about it.
I saw the videos even when, obviously the video circulating of Shankland. They're just the classic thing that I thought, no one's paying attention. Everyone's on their phones. People are just chatting amongst each other. The value of these things so much is you get nothing. The players aren't going to say anything, Raj. Nobody's going to say anything, Raj, to the players. It's just all a bit of a... The idea of them, I think, is always a lot better than the actual reality of them. And they are only probably going to be fun if you've done well. And then it'll be jovial. And the players will feel like, I'll probably want to get well involved with the fans and have their arses sucked up for a couple of hours. And then you might get a good laugh.
So the second thing, and this has annoyed me a bit, the comparisons of Critchley to Cathro, I just think it's I think it's just very kind of lazy. And I think it just comes from Cathro was the laptop manager. He was the guy who designed stuff on his computer to do with training and, I don't know, shape or whatever the fuck else. Whatever Cathro was doing on his laptop. Yeah, took notes, whatever.
Wow, what a dweeb.
Cathro was the laptop manager. And I think the association with Critchley is that because he was picked by an analytics model. But it doesn't mean that he's like Cathro. And I wouldn't say he is the most charismatic of Hearts managers I've seen in the press and in media, but he's also nowhere near the level of Cathro, who looked like he didn't know how to speak to people at all. Critchley at least kind of came across the fact that he could talk. He could talk he could say a sentence.
He could talk your ear off, to be honest. Critchley gave me that vibe. To be honest.
Yeah, he could say a sentence without getting into being a stuttering moron. You know what I mean? Him and Cathro, there's nothing alike. And if you want to and it just kind of annoys me because it's how much, and also you're taking interviews at face value. How impressive is Jimmy Teelan in interviews? How impressive is Don Cowie? How impressive is David Gray in interviews? None of them are. So you don't know what they're like behind the scenes. So I think all this is a lot of bollocks. And the reason why it really annoys me is because, and it kind of similar to Cathro as well, it kind of hides his biggest failings.
Nah.
And in Neil Critchley, it was the fact that he was average at setting out a team. He'd done some decent things in some games for the start, but he was terrible at changing things. Regardless whether on top or being behind and needed to change things for the better, he was awful at doing it. He really ever got it right. And it happened again this weekend. So Hearts are a goal down at half-time. However, Hearts in the first half, better team. I mean, I don't want to get too geeky with the kind of XG stuff, but the XG was over 1. Over 1 for a half is pretty good. You should be scoring, and Hearts just managed to miss a few good chances, and Simon Murray strikes at the other end. But instead of just sticking with what was actually working, you just hadn't managed to put the ball in the back of the net and fell asleep a little bit at the other end. Just like calm everybody down and just be like, right, go again, do what you're doing, have a bit of patience, believe in yourself, and go and do it. Instead, he chucks a baby out with the bathwater. He completely changes the team, goes from a 4-2-3-1, which started the game, to that fucking diamond that he loves so much. Don't understand. We're putting Musa Drama up front alongside Elton Kabangu. Dear Lord.
I could not believe when I was looking at that Biringami had came off for Drama. I was like, the drop-off is, I know they play different positions. I know it's not direct, like but I was absolutely stunned. The drop-off there is unbelievable.
And it wasn't like Berry had a bad game. He was like Hearts' best player in the first half. Like, you still need to have that control and that guy who could get the ball and then pass it in areas where other people can then maybe score you the goal.
Well, it's always this. It's always the idea of the Jimmy Calderwoods that if you just take it the entire midfield and put everyone up front, well, how is the ball going to get there? The ball still has to go through some sort of stages of creation till a chance is created. And it's always, but that maybe screams to a guy panicking. And that may be another reason why he's not even thinking clearly anymore. And there's a big, I don't know, I think big deal. I mean, we were talking in the chat earlier, and this is more in relation to fucking Jamestown analytics, which I'm thinking about deleting as a thing that I can't hear on Twitter. And there's nothing framed around Hearts anymore that doesn't involve Jamestown. It's like I know they've been giving money for it, but it's incessant. It's like the only thing that Hearts are anymore. Heart of Jamestown. It really is getting ridiculous. Everything about the club is framed around that. But anyway, I'll have that discussion another time. But these lower league English managers that come up, the pressure's a lot different, man. You get more money when you're at the lower league clubs in England. And I'm not saying there's no pressure, but the pressure's internal, the pressure's local press, the pressure's all like that. And then when you come up here, if it's the big city clubs, there's not so many people, but every radio show, every podcast, every TV show, everything to do with it, your decisions are spoke about even by outsiders. Right? That is what's different. And that will feel miles more pressure. And I do wonder when you talk about like charismatic figures and stuff, is that sometimes it takes a certain type of attitude to be able to run something in that type of environment when it moves away from just what type of, how much you know about football. Or what tactically, how aware you are. There are other factors at play, and this again where things about analytics, they can't run everything. It's a tool to be used rather than a tool to almost be a thrall at. Because sooner or later, I feel like it's just going to be zombies round Tynecastle. Everyone will have had to drink the Kool-Aid eventually. Jamestown. Because it's just I'm shocked at quite how much like column inches and like airtime Jamestown fucking analytics gets. It's I find it really weird.
Jamestown at Tynecastle being the new Jonestown.
Exactly. Jonestown analytics.
So there's not really much more to say about Hearts. He also threw up another centre half up front for the third game in a row to try and get something late in a game. That's not a good man.
Quite like some of the things that Dundee done. I mean, obviously, he finally moved away from just playing like the 3 at the back, 4 at the back. It's like doggy. Just imagine him just flipping back and forward in his bed at all times. Like this plays. I'm constantly at the dinner table with his wife moving the salt shakers between 3 and 4, just incessantly thinking about it. But this time, everyone thought it was, and then when 4 centre halves came out, it was confusing. Is it 3 at the back? And then with Portales being moved into midfield, which is quite an interesting move, but it was actually playing 4 at the back with Astley playing right back. So they went with that. And Portales went in midfield because I think Silla's carrying a knock, probably.
Yes, he was on the bench, but didn't he get off it?
Yeah, so there's maybe an interesting move in there, is that he's taken the most error-prone defender out of the defence and put in
the best footballer of the
best
of the
footballer and put him in there. And I think he did have a pretty good game. And then obviously, like we said, then the mad decision to remove Barry Ferguson is going to help that work even better. But I think Dundee, I think it's more for the highlights. It looks more like Dundee got away with it rather than they done. There was so many absolute sitters that Hearts missed, and Dundee did have a few. Obviously, they had the goal that they scored, which was a decent finish. Even though I'm still like with Kent. I mean, there's enough time, I think, to maybe close your legs, possibly.
Yeah,
to get that done there. But still brilliant for Murray, and obviously, I think it was Astley who actually ran out of the box and didn't square it to Murray later on when he would have been running in there. But the talismanic figure that Murray's become, it really suits him because of the raging stuff. That being raging after scoring really suits a talismanic figure. Like, there's no it's no clapping or anything like that. It's just like getting the ball, fucking come on, everything. And it's I have to say, I find it all really feel quite enjoyable watch. I think this captain talismanic role suits this player down to the ground.
Yeah, by Gary's count, and take this by a pinch of salt, he reckons that Simon Murray has been directly responsible for winning Dundee 11 points this season. So that's the difference between them potentially staying up and finishing rock bottom.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was certainly worth the transfer fee they paid for him, which at the time, I think a lot of us were thinking, that's a bit dodgy. He's only had one good season in the top flight at Ross County, and he's in his 30s. Why are you paying that much money for him? Well, it turned out they were right on that. I mean, just about every other signing they made last summer was pretty shit, but Murray was good.
Yeah. And I think obviously that Kabunga's totally fell off a cliff in terms of his finishing. It looked like he had another, like his game against Rangers at Tynecastle again, where he's really went off the boil again, but he's sort of finishing properly let him down. And was it Grant who missed the sitter when it came off the post? Yes. You just have to score. And that would be my biggest worry if I'm a Hearts fan. And trust me, I've seen this. I've seen this whole thing play out the way that what you're involved in. But it's like that game should be the one that sorts it. And then it does it. And then you have to go to Dingwall. So again, the first team you play is a team in 11th, Dundee, who then have to beat you to try and pull you in. They do that. Then it cuts down to 5 points. And then you play the next one, Ross County. Then it's another team that's getting there. And then you actually are in it. And you've already had these terrible ones. Then you're running out of games. Then the pressure comes. And then it's not missing sitters. Then it's blind panic, ball get kicked to, Musa Drama getting put up front. These are the sort of things that happen. So I like Dingwall next stinks. The stinkiest place for Hearts to be going. Just classically, up to Dingwall. Oh, you're lucky it's summer, really. And then it might not be so bad up there. But I think it properly reeks. But maybe you're right. You just play your joker card. Everyone gets a boot up the arse. And then everything gets settled after it.
Right, let's move on to our third game, which was the match up at Pittodrie. Hibs' long unbeaten run in the Scottish Premiership, going all the way back to December, coming to an end with a outrageous finish from former Easter Road favourite Kevin Nisbet, the only goal of the game with 10 minutes left. Tony, it looked to me like Hibs were pretty unlucky in this one to come away with nothing. They had they kind of had a goal disallowed. I think the maybe whistle went before it had crossed the line, or maybe even didn't cross the line. There's not really a definitive angle on that either. And also kind of had more of the chances before Nisbet's intervention. But what did you make of how Hibs played and how they lined up in this game?
Yeah, because Hibs, maybe unusually for what's happened, Hibs made 3 changes, obviously from a team that won 4-0 a few weeks previous, which I think stood out. I'm going to assume that one of them with Liam Miller coming out and not even being on the bench as he got injured. Simply, and obviously Lewis Miller, who was obviously playing absolutely out his skin as well. And Hibs had just extension. So that's a big loss. And not just the fact that Hibs have went unbeaten a lot of games with O'Hara involved, but Miller and Iredale, which has maybe come in maybe in the last 5 weeks, that sort of set up as the back three, that had brought another dimension to the way Hibs were playing. But then you move into the midfield, the big one, obviously, Josh Campbell coming in for Junior Hoylett. That's a bit of a shock to imagine a lot of outsiders and people watching, because Hoylett's been has been absolutely brilliant, really, the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks. And then Bowie for Miko, yeah, he's had another 2 weeks where he's not playing. He's had an unbelievable performance off the bench. I can definitely see why you would be tempted to bring him in. Although in the Dundee game, all round is probably the best Kukurevic had played in months, really, in terms of his all-round contribution. But this is where you get down to, like, with David Gray in this game and the way that Hibs actually played. I think he went for a tried and tested against Aberdeen. Josh Campbell is this season, well, every season Josh Campbell's a thorn in Aberdeen's side. I imagine he scored maybe about 60% of his goals against Aberdeen, if not more, to be honest. But obviously, like, it worked really well at Pittodrie last time. Campbell gets used in a lot of these games as it is. It allows Hibs to go a bit more direct because Campbell, all of a sudden, in the last sort of year, has become an extreme aerial threat, not just in the box, but also for winning sort of flick-ons a lot of the time. And so I can see why he brought Hoyle out, but you see why people get frustrated because Hibs lost in possession. Hibs weren't particularly good. And this is like Hibs played the way that Gray's played in Aberdeen games specifically and in other games this season where he does allow the opposition to have a lot of the ball. You don't see that in the highlights. Aberdeen were on the ball a lot. Hibs were a lot smarter than, say, Critchley was the week before because Critchley kind of got, bizarrely, I think, got lucky. Because the red card meant that Hearts played Aberdeen the way they probably should have played them for the start and not playing like a mental high line, which cost them the 10 men. Yeah. If he hadn't done that, if Hearts had played slightly deeper, I think they would have got, they could have let Aberdeen punch themselves out and they would have got loads of chances from set pieces and we're obviously getting on the counter-attack themselves. That's what Hibs tried to do and it kind of worked. The only difference was at this time, as Hibs in the other games against Aberdeen, I thought Dorringston and Noster were much better than previous incumbents playing there. So it meant Hibs, all their joy came from set pieces. And I mean, if you watch the highlights that you were talking about at the start, it is all set pieces and cross balls that Hibs are getting their joy from, apart from maybe the Martin Boyle shot, which went down the right. So that took away that sort of ideas that, yes, you let Aberdeen have the ball, but Hibs were normally quite blistering and they had other ways of hurting Aberdeen as well as the set pieces. So that was sort of like the thing. It was kind of... So then it kind of looks like Hibs are sort of built to play for a draw. And that's what I think was the big issue and why you saw such a difference when Nisbet did manage to score a wonder goal, that this is the problem when you play like that. It's so hard to suddenly change how you've already been playing. And that's especially because the other team, as you saw, Aberdeen, suddenly got a huge lift. And then they're playing, they're faster, they're better in the transition than they were. Because before that, as you saw by the highlight, like Aberdeen weren't getting anywhere. Hibs were just making loads and loads of blocks. They were getting no way in behind. And I was like, I'm not enjoying this one as much because, as I said, there's not as much us getting more ball in the transitions. We're not getting behind them as much. But at this stage of the season, and we're kind of getting out of Pittodrie with a point, 3 point, I was like, this, I'll accept it. And, you know, if Bashiri or Campbell or one of those headers go in, then it just looks like Gray's called everything right once again. But I think the one thing, so I didn't want to criticise Gray too much, although I can imagine other Hibs fans did, because, as I said, the Campbell one, obviously everyone knows that Campbell's...
Anytime you change a winning team and you don't win, fans are going to moan.
Yeah, and especially when it's Campbell, who's obviously a divisive player, as anyone knows, in the team, and he was taking out Hoylett, who has specifically been playing well in this period. But the biggest mistake he made was when he took Levitt off. I think that changed the game. I think because he wanted to get Nicky Cadden on, but it looked like he was just thinking about a way of getting Nicky Cadden on. And like that, he thought it took away the best bit about Nicky Cadden, having him kind of going into a central area. And Hibs lost all the control in their way of being able to play out. I thought Levitt was one of Hibs' better players on the day, and I thought that was just a mistake. And especially when you've still got Campbell on. So Campbell we lost the way of getting it for the midfield to the strikers. Then we suddenly lost the way of getting it for the defenders into the midfield. If you know what I mean. It all starts to get mumbled. Aberdeen come into it. And as I said, and this is always a danger, like this bit's goal is like 1 in a million. And like with the way Hibs have been going, it probably was going to be Either that or like a horrifically dodgy decision or something that eventually just catches you. You know what I mean? It just eventually gets you, and that it goes against you. But the goal is unreal. I mean, you could be O'Hara, maybe could do more to stop Shinnie's cross or whatever. But Bashiri gets the ball, and there's not the worst header from his side. But it's a chest that you're thinking he's going to have to take another touch. But he's under so much pressure and falling back, executing that shot. It's an absolutely unreal goal. And what a unique goal. One goal you've probably seen a goal like that you could count on one hand in your 30 odd years of watching football. So sometimes you have to accept it. And like I said, Aberdeen were miles better after that. Suddenly they're able to snap in the transitions. Hibs are being forced to push forward. The Hibs team looks a bit disjointed due to the subs and the fact that Hibs it kind of got comfortable in the way they were playing, and it was working without Hibs even having to play well. And then that meant that, like, after that, Hibs done nothing. Like, it was quite weird. See a team 17-match unbeaten run going, and obviously being a huge game against your main rivals, and you'd created chances previously. There was 20 minutes to go after that, and Hibs couldn't muster anything. It was like, maybe because of the style of goal as well, absolute gut punch. Oh, wow, I've never seen that fucking before.
Just constantly thinking about it, like trying to do your job.
Yeah.
Trying to go about, trying to put it across. Be like,
that?
Fucking hell, did you see that goal? Bloody hell. Oh, wait, I've given away possession.
Yeah,
again.
exactly. As I said, for an Aberdeen protector, I thought Dorrington and Noster miles better than, who was a big Serbian guy? I forgot his name already.
Slobodan Rubezic.
Yeah, when we played Aberdeen in other games, we were able to just knock the ball over his head, and it was fucking open season for Martin Boyle in games. And this one, they didn't allow that to happen. They two were much safer, and Shinnie going out to left back. They must be in a world of thinking they should have done this sooner, because it really seems to have worked out miles better for them since they put them out there. So they were strong defensively, apart from at set pieces, because I think they're pretty weak at set pieces, and Hibs had clearly looked at that as their main way forward. But I'd cry. It's no bit that I said that Hibs. I don't want to give Gray too much criticism for it, because I think on another day he's got it spot on again. But I think you're going to get beat. It's unfortunate it's against them, because that gives them 3 points that we don't get. And with a goal like that, it's just, I mean, sometimes you just have to go, well, that was fucking good, wasn't it?
Right, and let's go on to something else that was fucking good, which was the game between Motherwell and St Johnstone at Fir Park. 5 goals in this one. The home side winning by 3-2. Didn't start off the best way though for Motherwell, as they went down in 6 minutes to a Mackenzie Kirk goal, but they fought back, scoring twice before half time. Callum Slattery equalising before a minute later. Sven Sprangler inadvertently putting the ball into the back of his own net after Johnny Cotrombrus somehow conspired to miss the target from about 4 yards. Motherwell were not finished there. They added a second, just 3 minutes. They added a third, just 3 minutes into the second half, with Tom Sparrow scoring from close range before Elliot Watt brought St Johnstone back into it, which meant a nervy finish at Fir Park. But Motherwell get the victory, and basically that's them safe now. It's not automatic, but I think when a lot of people look at the table, and I mean, it's a little bit like this with Hearts as well. Like I said earlier, Hearts probably only need say if Hearts draw at Ross County next week, that's probably Hearts home and host, because it's not just about the fact that you look at so if you look at Motherwell and Ross County, and there's 7 points between them, and it's like, well, there's 12 points to play, so they're not out of it yet. But the problem is that it's not just Ross County that have to pass them, it's every other team as well between them and Ross County, and these teams are all playing each other. So they can't get a result from elsewhere that means that they're all going to win on the same weekend. So, and also as well, I think I looked it up earlier, and what was the exact stat? Yes, if Motherwell finished 11th from this point, they would make Scottish football history as the first team to finish 11th in a 12-team league with 42 points. The highest previously was St Mirren with 41 in 2012-13. So nobody's even done it with 41 going into the playoffs as well. So Motherwell are pretty much safe.
It has been a season, apart from Hearts, actually, where I feel like every other team, maybe this isn't even the best time to bring this up, but just about different things have happened this season, where even St Johnstone with that Celtic one, where that nearly would have put them out, every team seems to have been able to have a huge performance when their back's been against the wall. And or unusual or big moments when teams need to win. That seems to have happened for nearly every team, apart from possibly, as I said, Hearts are the only ones who haven't experience seeing their team sort of drive back. But this was a huge one for Motherwell, for example. Team bottom of the league, let's get this done, get home. They've not been playing particularly well at the moment, and they sort of pulled out the bag. Dundee at Tynecastle there. That's a huge result. Pulling out the bag when you need to. Just Hearts, I suppose, I haven't bothered.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it was. So this would have, had they lost this one with Dundee winning, it would have been 4 points, bunched the table a lot, and also would have brought St Johnstone back into play for escaping automatic relegation. But Motherwell weren't great. They were good for a period. So the 30-minute period, so starting around about the half-hour mark up until about 60 minutes, I thought Motherwell were good. But overall, it wasn't a great performance. They ultimately had to be very reliant on Tony Watt having what was maybe his best performance this season. Definitely one of them. I thought it was a bit daft. I think a lot of Motherwell fans agreed, especially after he didn't really do anything against Hearts the week before, to play him up front on his own. But he was excellent, particularly after Michael Wimmer changed the shape.
Just before you go into that, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but it was Michael Wimmer's comments midweek, coupled with what I see at the weekend with Tony Watt. At this stage of the season, it's how important to show character, give everything on the pitch, everything for the club. Show who wants to stay and play for the club next season. It's good for me to see who had the heart to play for Motherwell and secure our status in the league as soon as possible. This is the perfect situation for that. To influence my decision on the squad for next season. There's no man in this country who likes a contract more than Tony Watt. And suddenly that has lit a fire under him. And suddenly we're seeing him everywhere, between the posts, turn up out wide, seeing all his technique that you see all the time. He is a guy that he always just seems like a guy that needs to be managed. Like, you have to manage him. And you need to play him out. And it seems like prime time to maybe play Watt. And it does seem daft, but he wants a contract. You've lit a fire under him with that. Let's just give him like up front by himself where he can drift and he can do what he wants. And then suddenly it all works. Maybe decent management from Wimmer there.
Yeah, they weren't getting anything from this game until Watt started to really kind of turn on. And he was probably, even when they were struggling early on, he was probably their best player. And you saw it with the goals, like both of them, him drifting out to the left. Uh-huh. And he should have 2 assists if Cottrombus finishes that chance. He has 2 assists from the first half. And then even the third goal, he doesn't get an assist, and it's not his even pass that kind of sets things up. But he made the ball stick initially. He then has a couple of more touches in the build up to Thompson crossing for Sparrow. But the change was quite key for Wimmer. He started with a 3 at the back, the 3-4-3. It wasn't working at all. They were getting absolutely nothing from their wide players, and the midfield, the kind of midfield box with the 4 centre midfielders. So Slattery, Payton, Halliday and Miller, there was a kind of periods of decent play between them, but it was like there's just no penetration here. Nobody, Payton and Slattery were having to go too wide to really be close to Watt. So there was nobody going beyond the striker. And like I say, with nothing coming from wide, it was just like the only way you're able to do this is to move through the centre of the park. But without anybody going beyond the striker, and the striker himself, who's not necessarily ever been known as somebody who's going to dart away from opposing defences and play on the last shoulder. He's never been that kind of player. So it just didn't work at all. But when he changed things, he changed it to a 4, put Sparrow further up on the right, just played Cottrombus as a right back. Yeah. And then he had Payton on the left, and Slattery went in the number 10. And then Slattery all of a sudden had a big impact on proceedings as well. So that was good for them. But then St Johnstone themselves, to kind of swing it back around. So their starting 11 was wild. But it's partly due to circumstance and the fact that they don't have really any fit defenders. What's his name? Daniel Balodis was the only fit centre-half who was available. And that
Big Bozo was out.
Yeah, he's out for a while.
Yeah.
Signed a new contract, out for a while. And they obviously recently lost Zach Mitchell as well. And Barry Douglas wasn't even fit. So they've not...
Douglas was on the bench,
Oh, was he on the bench? Sorry, I didn't even realise that. But
I'd play him instead of Sprangler, probably, but that's just me. And probably everyone else.
I mean, the problem is though, you didn't really have anybody to play in the centre and that. So but anyway, they started with a 4. Douglas is probably too small to play as a centre back.
Yeah.
So they started with 4 at the back, but so it was a 4 at the back. They had Taylor Stephen at left back. Now Taylor Stephen was on loan at Alloa last year and played as a winger. So they've got a winger at left back who's a teenager, I believe, as well. At least he's very young. And then you've obviously got Curtis on the other side, who's more of a kind of forward-thinking fullback as well. And then in the midfield, you had Josh McPake, who came up with 2 assists and had a good game. On the left, on the right, they had Duke McKenna, so that's another winger. And then they had basically 2 up front, Kirk playing a bit deeper as he tends to do in that setup, but 2 out-and-out forwards, and Graham Carey is one of the midfield 3. So they concede, and the thing is that it's an annoying game that they lost, because, and I'll get onto the kind of change that meant they finished the game strongly, but they started the game, the better of the two, well, it was probably pretty even, but they did go a goal up, and then they did have a wee bit of period where they put Motherwell under, not like considerable pressure, but enough to make the home crowd a bit nervous that they were about to go 2-0 down to the worst team in the league in the first half. And I think the annoying thing is that they didn't do much with it when they were on top in that situation, didn't create enough when they were very much on top towards the end, and gave away 3 kind of really cheap goals, but that was down to the kind of team that they were playing. The first goal, Carey doesn't track Slattery's run properly. Carey's 35, never been a great defensive player anyway. The second goal, McPake actually does the tracking of following Kutrombis all the way from the Motherwell half, but doesn't go the extra yard and get goal side. And the third goal, yes, Sprangler's very poor, and a proper centre-half deals with that a lot better, but it's still Duke McKenna failing to win a 50-50 in his own penalty area. Just too many attacking players on the team. And they got better.
Not this again, Simo. We thought we'd seen this. We thought we'd seen the past.
Fluctuated wildly back and forth between like very kind of negative teams and very like overly attacking teams. And I thought they got better when they brought on Elliot Watt and Uche Ikpeazu. Uche for his return to the Scottish Premiership.
Welcome back.
I loved watching him again. He's so fun to watch. And he's just like not much of a footballer at all, but was a nightmare for the Motherwell defence, just continually pinning Dan Casey and making the ball stick and keeping the ball around the penalty area. He also very clearly dived to try and win a penalty, and then the Uche theatrics afterwards when he gets up and he's dramatic as fuck and how he can't believe this decision hasn't gone against him. I was just chuckling away and be like, big man, it's really good to have you back. But he helped up front, and Watt gave him another player in the centre of the park, or just not even necessarily the centre of the park, gave him another player with a bit of experience who you could just get on the ball. Like, instead of like just having all these wingers and forwards, and kind of young wingers and forwards as well, who don't have the experience to just kind of do the thing of like, okay, I'm just going to take this right now and I'm going to keep possession for us and I'm going to keep us in this half and I'm going to find and just showing for the ball and things like that. Elliot Watt was 2 big Watts to make the big impact on this game. But Watt just kind of coming on, obviously scoring the goal, but also just somebody who was just kind of showing for the ball in the middle of the park, recycling things, helping to push Motherwell back. And Motherwell even actually had to make another change later in the game, going back to 3 at the back, a 3-5-2 with Armstrong coming on.
Yeah.
Because they needed to try and make it stick. And it helped a little bit, but it was pretty much one-way traffic. The only thing is that St Johnstone, like I said earlier, just couldn't really create anything really else to bring it back to 3 each. But it certainly looked for a while as the game was ticking on that was going to happen.
The difference here is that like with Motherwell's change of shape to the 4, that sort of protected their weakest link in Thompson, maybe at left back. He's had his better performances when he played in a 4 against Rangers at Ibrox. I'm pretty sure that was a 4, and he played in left back in that, and that was one of his better games. And with Payton being in front of him, that sort of protects him. He had someone to play off because he struggled a lot as the winger, and Wimmer's done that quite a lot. He's chopped and changed between the 3 and the 4, whereas Kettlewell was like he was a back 3 guy. And always with the wing back, and then you go to St Johnstone, like you say, it was like they've just sort of ran out of road at the back, and it's like their weakest players like Curtis and Sprangler, it's just there for all to see. There's not enough people around so they can protect them or not play them, and then it's kind of bad for them because they play Celtic, and this happens all the time. They played Celtic last week, and the confidence takes another rock in when they've been doing quite well and they get absolutely battered. And a guy like Curtis was fucking minging against Celtic. I don't want to kick him another kicking because when you told me he was a teenager last time, I was like, I felt a bit bad because I said some of the most horrendous things you can say about a player. But so I don't want to go back into that there. But again, he had a really poor game against Celtic, and it's really hard. It's such a learning curve, and then you have to go into this. And it becomes so difficult to bounce back for these humpins that you get of Celtic, and when the old firm kill your form. We spoke about this a lot when you're going around and then suddenly you go from like no defeats in 5 to 1 win in 5. You know, it happens overnight with the when you play the Old Firm, and I feel like they've kind of ran out of road a bit, because at the minute they lose Bozo and they've got Polides, there's something there, and there was something to hold on to, and he was finding a bit of balance in some games, Balakari. But unfortunately, they've kind of that's it. This game kills them. It's just impossible to see how they do it again. I know they might have a performance in them, but it's hard to see. And just with Motherwell, just keep Slattery in that 10 role, man. I love it. I think it works perfect. I think if they use him next season in that role, I spoke about a lot about when I done a bit on a View for the Terrace on him after he played that. He'd done a couple of games and he scored a double in there when Motherwell were absolutely fucking shit in a game, when he scored a double, and obviously when he used him there against Rangers at Ibrox. I think it works perfectly. And it's like his other side of his game is sort of pressing, he's chasing, and his aggressive tackling actually suits a player in that role in Scottish football. So it's like, I think they might have an absolute nugget of a player for that role if they get it right. And I think he'd go on and have like an absolutely brilliant season. He straddles all the things, the attributes that you need to be a successful sort of number 10. It's like he's like half and half of ones that do quite well in this league. So I think keep on going it and let him keep going and let him get the goals in.
He is. That's absolutely mad. He is the joint top highest goal scorer this season, and he's only played in 12 games. But
you've got to nurture that, in my opinion. I think you do. I think you have to wait. When things are screaming you in the face, I think, and you've already done it, just do it.
I'm just going to double check that, because I got that from Wikipedia. I don't know if that's been updated. No, that is right. 12 games, 5 goals.
Do it. Just keep it.
That's the same as Tom Sparrow, who's played 33 games. And Stavitolopoulos, who's never seen because he's permanently broken.
Yeah, he's an injury prone merchant, eh? Can he hack it?
Masmerises, he got 5. No, Masmerises got 5 as well in 31 appearances.
I remember people thought he was brilliant for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I was never really sold on that, to be honest. Right, anyway, let's move on to our penultimate game, which took place at Rugby Park, and that was Kilmarnock beating Ross County by 2-0. Goals in each half from Bruce Anderson and Liam Donnelly, enough for Derek McInnes' side to get a crucial 3 points and move above County, who slide down to 11th place after that result. And Tony, dear Lord, first half of this game was minging.
Yeah.
Awful, awful game of football. And I would say Kelly were fortunate that they were playing Ross County in this game. I think, and I'll get to exactly why later on. I think if they'd been playing anybody else, it would have been in a bit of trouble. But I don't know whether their approach was basically to kind of let County do what they were trying to do, and then just like, but I don't think so, because it's just kind of, it's hard to assume a team's doing that because they're playing at home and they're the favourites and it's a crucial must-win game. But Kilmarnock for a lot of this half were kind of like sitting back and like retreating quite a lot and kind of keeping things tight at the back more. And that was maybe due to who they were playing up front. So when I watched the highlights on Saturday evening, I saw the Killie team and I saw that it had Fraser Murray up front alongside Bruce Anderson with Bobby Wales on the left. And I thought, well, that can't be right. And now I know that Wales has played largely on the left, and due to the fact that he's not quite ready, the kind of the experience stuff to play as a kind of centre forward, he's back to goal. It's probably best to put him on the left, but I just thought Fraser Murray as the kind of second striker was a bit of a bold call, but that's exactly how they played. And with him and Anderson,
he loves lopsided stuff.
He certainly does. He certainly does.
I don't think he used to. He used to. It's something he's really fallen in love with at Kilmarnock, and he's with varying degrees of success.
But to me, it kind of showed like how much their identity has maybe been lost a bit this season with all the injuries and all the struggles and all the suspensions and stuff. Is that you think of like the way the Killie team plays, and you've got Fraser Murray and Bruce Anderson up front together as your strike pairing, because Marley Watkins has been crap recently. Mm-hmm. He was on the bench. He came on with about 11 minutes to go, I think. And Kyle Vassell, he was on the bench, but just back from injury. Didn't get on, obviously not fully fit enough to play. Was presumably just on the bench in case they needed to chuck him on for like injury time to aim long balls to, or crosses in the penalty area. But yeah, first half, they done really kind of nothing in an attacking sense. But they did still a little bit of threat on the counter-attack, and then just out of the blue, they're a goal up. And
good for Armstrong. Good to see him doing something. A cross, yay!
Not had a great season, but a good cross. And you could tell that Zach Ashworth was expecting him to cut inside as Armstrong often does.
Yeah.
Instead, he goes on his right, and it's a great ball to the back post. Lapata should do better, I think, but it's a good run as well, peeling off from Anderson and a good header. And Anderson he led the line very well for Killie in this one, worked himself into the ground, held the ball up well, linked well, and obviously got the goal.
I think they should have reverted to Anderson a bit sooner in terms of like the main strike, like you're saying with Watkins. And I know there was a period where him and Vassell done all right at the start of the season, and they had a few good games in Europe when that style of play really seemed to fuck up a few of the Norwegian teams and whatever. But I think they should have went more for Anderson pretty quicker.
Into the second half, and Killie were a lot better. I didn't really see much in terms of a kind of change in shift. It was just more of a change in attitude. They were just a lot more aggressive in and out of possession. The defenders were coming up to challenge the county forwards as soon as they kind of got the ball, stepping up and winning it back, and then kind of releasing the midfielders. And also as well, just a number of players just getting forward more. The team as a whole was just kind of further up the pitch. Guys making runs into the penalty area from deep that just wasn't really happening in the first half. There was barely anybody that was getting into the final third other than the kind of two forwards and two wide players. And I wonder whether that was by design or whether it was a case of McInnes thought, to begin with, like I said, we've got these kind of guys up front who are a bit more quicker and more physical, so let's play on the counter-attack. And then they realised at half-time, having watched Ross County, it doesn't actually matter. We could just play our game because they're absolute pish.
And then obviously they brought, was it Affetti that came on for the Pata? Yes. He had an absolute abysmal game. And they put him down the right-hand side. So you're saying Lapata maybe a bit at fault for the goal. And then Affetti comes on. He's just a big lumbering guy, isn't he? And then down the right side, then they just start getting tons of joy down that side, and he can start concentrating on it. Maybe move on to County. And I was thinking listen to what you were saying about the performance. I know you watched the game. I look at the lineup. I'm waiting for Don County to turn up and went, you said, you fucking been saying constantly, play White and Hale, play White and Hale. And then doesn't seem to have...
well...
Okay, have you got an excuse for me? I'm listening.
I'll tell you what the fucking problem is. And right now, I've written this down in my notes. I am officially in the getting fed up of Don Cowie camp. Because what in the Christ was that team? So you're playing Hale and you're playing White up front. I think that's what they should do. Because without Chilvers, they're really lacking creativity. However, a midfield three
right, okay. Let's play
of Noah Kenna, Conor Randall and Scott Allardyce. Dear God, man, there is absolutely nothing about that. Like, I don't think that Josh Nesbitt is like necessarily a very creative player at this level, but you can see he's got something about him on that end. He's got some amount of technique.
And this is what we're back to further when it's like, if you've not, this is what my argument's always been about White and Hale. Is that if you've not got enough, even if they're not brilliant, they're the type of player that they have. You have to have attributes to make a football team. And like you're saying, Josh says it might not be the best, but he's the best you've got available. And you need to have someone who can have some sort of creativity on the pitch. So you have to play him. There's rules. There's rules to how football teams work.
So there's nobody in that midfield other than maybe Conor Randall to a small extent.
Come on.
Who, if you're knocking the ball forward, then you're knocking it to White, and it's only Hale. Hale's it. Like, that's it. There's nobody else. You can't head it on and then, look who's suddenly arrived. Like, how high Akil Wright was playing at times in the first half was obscene. But it's because he has to. Because he's somebody that's got a bit of kind of verticality about him.
Uh-huh.
Like, he's been moved out of centre defence into that wing-back role in a kind of needs-must way for County. But he's somebody that can at least kind of make those kind of direct runs. So he was like getting up to try and support. I'm like, Christ, he was starting off the season as like a centre-half. What is going on with this team? And it was just a mad, not only was it a mad lineup, but it was the kind of lineup where your game plan is, right, we're going to do nothing except sit in and knock it long. And we're going to hope that we either get a set piece or we'll get White getting a flick on, Hale making a perfectly timed run in behind 1-0. And we'll do nothing the rest of the game other than try to defend that. Keep a clean sheet. If we leave 1-0 draw, fair enough, still keeps us ahead of Kilmarnock. We'll take that or if we manage to nick one, then we can maybe that's going to be a weighty victory. I want to know what Don Cowie actually thought his weighty victory was in this game, because even though Jordan White had the most headers, aerial attempts in the league this season, there was still, considering the team, I just felt they've far too often tried to build it from the back through to midfield. But it's like, once it goes into midfield, who is doing anything out of that group? Who is doing anything? Nobody. And it didn't help as well that Ashworth, who had played the 90 minutes in the St Mirren game, and I didn't watch that match, but I'm assuming had a good game because that would be why he was kept in for this one. It was on to him because obviously you got right on one side, so he's not going to deliver many crosses. He's going to get forward and kind of use his athleticism that way, but you need somebody to deliver a ball. Ashworth was terrible, so he didn't provide any either. So they're trying to pass through Killie. And like I say, Killie are dropping deep and saying, like, okay, what can you do? And County had no answer at all because there just wasn't enough quality on the park. And you can't just sit a team like that. And it's also as well like, no, losing Chilvers and losing him for, I think, the rest of the season. I think that's right.
Well, they didn't even fucking rate him, the County fans. No fucking no respect.
It's a massive blow, obviously. But it's what happens when, on two fronts. One, they never really tried to get a replacement for Chilvers if he suffered a kind of big loss in form or got injured. And even before he got injured, his form had actually tailed off and could have done with a spell at the teams, just that they couldn't, because he was basically their only creative force. They've had that, what's his name? Jack Greaves. Mm-hmm. And he was on the bench for this one, didn't he get on? They've had him.
No, no.
They got him at the start of the season. He was originally going to be like the creative player. And then they're like, all right, he's not actually any good. So they signed Chilvers. But Greaves has never really showed himself like he's got Cowie's trust. But also makes me think, why is he still there? Why did they not get rid of him in January and try and bring in somebody else who Cowie might actually like? Yeah. Aye, they switch out for somebody better.
Just a similar style of player.
So there's that.
But Cowie I imagine I've quite liked it at times, because I've said before on here that I like that he does try to impact things. He tries to do everything, but yes. The way you're talking is like as a man that's maybe tying himself in knots and doesn't have any quality players either.
Aye, and he's also backed himself into a corner with the fact that he's only set up the squad, he's only constructed the squad to play one formation, or a variance of one formation, either 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. Tinkers around with the midfield stuff. He tinkers around with stuff within the system, but he never, ever changes the system.
With the players, that's for sure.
And a best way to go about like a match like this would have been to play like, match Killie up, go 4-4-2. Have one player out wide who's maybe could tuck in, make sure you don't lose the midfield battle, but have somebody else who's an out-and-out winger. They don't really have an out-and-out winger to play. And so it just has to keep playing the three at the back, and there is no proper... He may have plan B, C, E, and F, and G, and like so many different plans within the three at the back, but he has no plan B in terms of what he's going to do if that stops working. And I think we're maybe at the stage now where that has stopped working. And I'm very scared to say it, because obviously Hearts are playing them next week in Dingwall. But we're at this point. We're at this point now where I'm looking at their recent form, I'm looking at how they're playing, I'm looking at how the squad's constructed, who's in form, and I'm thinking, I'd be surprised if County moved from 11th place now between now and the end of the season. And if they meet Livingston in the playoff final, I'd be very concerned if I was a County fan.
Oh, well. Hopefully, but they've got Hearts next, so everything is going to be fine, isn't it? So.
Yeah, they'll win
3-0. But, yeah, if they don't have any, especially if they've not got Chilvers back, then you don't have any of that option. What they've got is just how they're going to keep going. So,
yeah.
Anyway, let's get one more game. I can smell a haggis pie being built in my kitchen. So
being built, not even cooked.
No, it was being built. I think lids are being put on them, and I want to eat it. I can smell it.
Right. Okay. So the final game, St Mirren to Rangers 2, a decent enough game, but the least important game of the weekend. Rangers have got nothing to play for between now and the end of the season. St Mirren have nothing to play for, but at least they put on a good show. Let me find the game again so I can tell you the scorers. Yes, Cyril Dessers putting Rangers ahead shortly before half time.
Love that goal, by the way. It's a great goal, just all round.
And I'll get onto the kind of significance of it in terms of Rangers' performance in the first half and then the second half soon enough. So Dessers' first goal, Mark Arrow equalises a couple of minutes later, just before half time. Nico Raskin then puts Rangers 2-1 up shortly into the second half. But Conor McMenamin equalises for St Mirren to ensure a share of the spoils. Now, I'm going to start with Rangers in this one because we had Barry Ferguson after the game talking about how, I think he was heard to shout to somebody, you don't listen. You just don't listen.
And he was running, he done the thing where none of the players are listening about what I tell them to do. I saw that soundbite. I put it up on the chat, and I absolutely love stuff like that. I absolutely love that way of talking. They just don't listen to me. Oh, what the hell am I meant to do? It's your job to make them listen. It's your job to motivate them to trust your plan.
Exactly. Now, I can't say what Barry Ferguson was trying to tell the players that they weren't doing. However, I do know how he set out this team. And again, it made no sense in a domestic context. I said this after the Dundee game. I was kind of flummoxed as to what he was actually trying to do with the Aberdeen game. Like having made the changes at halftime to get them into the game and kind of reacting and stuff and not actually resting players. So it's like, do you want to just chuck this game away or do you not? What are you actually going for here? And in this game, it was very much like, what are you actually going for here? Because here was the setup. 3-5-2 with two sitting midfielders, two wing backs who were constantly pinned back by St Mirren's wing backs and like not even... I mean, I'll get into St Mirren eventually and praise them. So there was a bit of pressure. But I mean, it is Rangers. Like you can just go, oh, you can just go do what you want, mate. I'm going to go forward because we're going to bet that us at the back will be able to take care of business and we'll use our superior talent further forward to win the game. But no, they were kind of very reticent to get forward, and Tav and Jefty, like that first half, I've barely seen Tav like that uninvolved in a game going forward. Like you just never really saw him in the final third. So there's them, and they've also got the two wing back. Sorry, they played three at the back. You've got two centre halves on either side who are decent with the ball, but neither of them broke through the lines. So it just constantly with Rangers getting the ball, passing the ball out for the goalkeeper, having the ball in their own half, and really having nowhere to go with it. So you had constantly, during that period, clipped balls forward, like into the channels, especially they liked going into the left channel for Dessers or Igaman to try and chase down. And when they weren't doing that, and when they did manage to pass it through, you would then get the ball at the feet of Diamande as the number 10. But even then, he gets on the ball and he's only got three options. He could go himself or he could try and find Dessers and try and find Igaman. There was no other help coming. And I was just watching it being like, I can't even, like, this is Rangers. Like, this is Rangers away to St Mirren. This is, like, so, like, negatively set up. And I talked about the goal. The goal was important because it's also kind of how they played in the second half when they did, until St Mirren made a change, which I'll come back to later. They did look a bit more impressive and they were a bit more attacking, which was it. If you see the goal and the build-up, it comes for a St Mirren attack. Proper just darts out from the defence and goes into the midfield to receive a pass. Then that gets Rangers up the park. And then you also see Raskin going ahead of Diamande. Mm-hmm. These are things that just weren't happening at all. And then that just creates problems, creates overloads, creates situations for St Mirren to have to deal with. They didn't deal with it very well, and Dessers gets the ball into the back of the net. And like I said, they did do better in the first half, but I mean, Barry Ferguson has got to look at himself if he's slagging anybody. Like the way they approached that match just made no sense to me.
I'm not sure. Introspective thinking is high on Barry Ferguson's attributes list. But yeah,
he's really fallen in love with his three at the back because it's worked at like a way to Celtic and a way to Fenerbahce. But in these matches, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't understand. I know he's smarter than that, though. I know he does, and I know he's worked with managers. So it does get me. I was always like, all right, because at first when you see that he went three at the back and he used it in Europe, I think it's saying like, all right, clever, right? He's found out a way that he's going to use that, and that'll give him balance, and he'll figure out ways of doing it against. For these big games, and then he'll be able to come in, but then just continue to do it. It's basically, and for the highlights I've watched and the reading I've done, it's just Raskin again, and I know he gets his second goal, good finish. It's just a one-man band. It's getting like at Rangers. It's totally just him, and it's just basically now they have to think, if the 49ers do take over, sign him up, build a team around him, and if they don't, they're going to have to sell him because you can barely sell anyone fucking else.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to sell him to like fund them to do the mass surgery that's needed across the rest of the team.
Yeah, I forgot to actually say in the second half he made a slight alteration where he changed the midfield three and instead of two sitting, it was one sitting and two playing ahead. and one of the players playing ahead was Raskin, and you see that with him getting the second goal. But to praise
that's something that Ferguson has learned, is that he's shown that there's more to Raskin's game. That's something that he's allowed to happen in various games. So now you think that Raskin's got loads of tools to be a box-to-box player rather than just a destroyer or anything. And that's probably the best thing. When all said and done, that'll be the best thing that Ferguson's done for Rangers in terms as a long-term thing that they can offer. But yeah, St Mirren off the back of impressive, because off the back of selling what's his name? Olasanya. Obviously that sends a bit of a message that season's over, kind of thing. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, they've got top six. He's really out of contract. Someone's wanting to give them 6 figures. You're fucking selling them. But again, it's like Robinson and St Mirren will play this role the best if having nothing to play for and able to still get them to go, because I think they'll just enjoy fucking people up. That's something that they'll enjoy doing. And again, it's just Phillips again with that little bit of skill that you saw for Phillips, who's had such a really good. Yeah, brilliant, man. Brilliant. Because it wasn't like it was fake. It was like, people might do that, but they don't need to. I felt like it was
Liam Kelly done well to actually kind of not be completely flat-footed by that.
And again, and I've said this so many times when I've been on a Monday, if they can keep him, Boyd, Munson, O'Hara, the season, I think, pretty much turned on the fact that he got those 3 in there. It really works. It really, really works. O'Hara got his obligatory goal against Rangers. And it's insane how many goals he scored against Rangers. But again, with those 3 in there, it's just they could do a lot, that St Mirren team with those in there.
Well, I would say this probably wasn't quite the game for it. I think Boyd Munce probably had one of his poor games, and he was one of the ones that went off with a substitute. But I'll rewind it back slightly before then. And you could tell that St Mirren were just very much up for this, very much fancied it. We're playing quite aggressively, we're pressing quite high. And the thing that will annoy Stephen Robinson and the St Mirren fans and the team in general will be the fact that on 3 occasions they've helped to force a Rangers defender or goalkeeper in a conceding position in a really bad area and didn't score from them. Didn't score from them, and didn't even have a shot on goal on one of the occasions. And like I mentioned as well, the fullbacks were pushed up quite high to put pressure on the Rangers and to try and pin back Tavernier and Jeffrey. Although, as I said, I thought Rangers made that a little too easy on them. But what really worked was, O'Hara, who made some errors but had an impact, and Phillips as good as he's been all season. Very strong defensive performance from 3 centre-halves as well overall, other than the Rangers' first goal, I would say. But I felt the second half, when Rangers started to take charge, it could have got away from them, but Robinson made a very good change in that he moved to the 3-4-3, because I think the only thing that didn't really work about the St Mirren starting 11 was playing the twin towers of Mandron and Ayunga. Now without Olasanya, you are hamstrung in terms of what you can do, because he's a big option for them with his pacing behind that's not there anymore. But I did wonder whether they thought that Rangers, considering Rangers against Aberdeen recently, started with 3 at the back, changed to a 4 at half time, got back into the game, that Ferguson would have stuck with it, because that's what he should have done. So then you're thinking, right, the fullbacks will push on, so we could have a Ayunga and Mandron up against 2 centre-halves. One of them could even be Robin Proper. That's going to go in our favour. Instead, Rangers had 3 at the back. Proper was the spare man. So they never really got much joy, not as much as they maybe would have done and maybe have done in games against the
until Suter and Nasalia don't deal with the ball into the box, and O'Hara scores, of course.
But in terms of the 2 guys up front kind of having an impact on the game, it wasn't there. I've seen them play better, let's put it that way. But then I thought they improved tremendously in an attacking sense when they made the changes and went to a 3-4-3. Took off one of the forwards, brought in McMenamin and Adua, and took off Boyd Munce. Just had Phillips and O'Hara in the centre of the park, and it just created more options in the final third, more dynamism. McMenamin was great when he came on, but just him on the right as well, being lively, also just helped create a bit more space for Abelosi to also impact the game further forward. And they were putting, it wasn't just a goal that came from nowhere. Like in the 5-10 minutes leading up to it, they were putting a lot of pressure on that Rangers defence, and they eventually got the reward.
And then McMenamin, that's a big goal. He's come back from injury. He's like 30. Kind of felt sorry for him because he's coming out of contract and he got an injury at a bad time. He's already So he was coming in to get into this level of football quite late anyway. So you're like, it's a bit of a brutal time to go through that. So I was quite pleased to see him come on, make an impact, and maybe he might be able to force himself into getting a contract next season.
Right, Tony, I think that'll do us. An hour and 25 minutes.
Too much Celtic shite at the start, nobody cares about. And as I said, I was at a stag do, so I didn't, and there was only one. I was only able to see the Hibs game on there, and I know you put the effort in, and I've been watching a lot of games over there. So good, you put a shift in there, fella. Well done.
I did. There was a lot of football watched. Watching the Kilmarnock Cross County game last was a mistake. I should have went with that earlier when I still had a bit more energy. I would still manage to watch it, but it would have been a lot easier to watch like the Rangers game afterwards, where stuff was actually happening. Especially that first half, I was like starting to drift off, like watching it on my laptop. I was like, those one where you're like, you start to like, you don't even realize your eyes are closed, like your brain's thinking, and then you're like thinking, and your brain starts to drift, and you're like, wait, hang on, am I awake? No, wait, no, shit.
Mate, your brain starts to drift and you start thinking absolute rubbish right before you fall asleep, and everything, you're like, what did I? And that sometimes wakes me up. What did I just think there? That doesn't. But yes, thank you very much, Fowler, and I shall see you soon, I'm sure.
Yes, and thank you to everybody for listening. If you'd like to hear more from the Terrace Podcast, the easiest way to do so is to join the Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast, where there are hours and hours of bonus content available for as little as £2 a month. But until next time, bye.
Beer.